Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us today on Winsight Live. Before I kick it over to Phil Lempert, a couple of stories that are freshly published at Winsight Grocery Business. Dollar General has a brand new store concept called Pop Cart. This is a store that features home goods, party goods, some other items like that, non-consumable goods, in a 9,000 square foot format that uses its legendary efficiency, about 15 employees. That some people are comparing to a take on the Five Below concept. I kind of see it a little bit like a little bit more aimed towards kind of the Dollar Tree store, which is a little bit less consumable focused. Interesting thing from sort of a trade perspective, this new store came out of what Dollar General calls the Non-Consumable Initiative, or NCI, which was a program that was going to put value priced short-term items into their stores as a means to draw traffic in a style that would be kind of their own take on an Aldi or a Costco that kind of does a good job with that. That's led to increased sales and better margins at Dollar General. That's come to about 5,000 stores, and now they're saying, well, let's do it kind of reverse. Let's make a store that's built around these items, and then we'll bolster the selection with some food and drinks and some other items from our regular selection, which is EDLP priced. Also today we've got a thing on Ahold Delhaize getting kudos from the organization, the Produce for Better Health, not Produce for Partnership for Healthier America,
Partnership, yeah.
for their option or their goals to increase the percentage of their own brand sales that meet their safety, food, nutrition goals through their Guiding Stars program, Phil.
So John, a couple things. First, back to Dollar General. Do you think that they're actually going to sell Pop-Tarts in this store?
I think it kind of plays off the idea of this pop-up store and the idea of it's got this kind of fuchsia purplish color. It's one of those stores that uses a small letter P as the first letter of the thing. It sort of gives this kind of vibe of fun. The O in Pop Cart is up above, and that's an element that kind of carries through some of the store signage and displays and the other stuff. So, maybe the Dollar General shopper, generally a lower income shopper, and they've got this opportunity where they are selling these things at great prices. Maybe the people who don't associate Dollar General as the kind of place where they would buy party goods and other things kind of come into this thing because they've learned a lot about how to merchandise these items in those stores. Really interesting concept from Dollar General, which is also a grocery store now and a convenience store called DGX. Now they're on to a kind of a non-consumable small store.
So, John, I know you don't like to toot your own horn, but yesterday in my email, I got a new newsletter from you. Tell us about that newsletter.
The Basket Economics newsletter, it's called. And that was based on, what I've been calling my blog, where I do kind of analysis of the news and personal reflections when necessary, and kind of, in my area of expertise, which I kind of consider the day-to-day retail combat and the sort of financial business part of things, arose from a story we talked about last week. United Natural Foods having a great fiscal fourth quarter and getting destroyed in the next day in the markets. And I looked at it and I said, well, guess what? This isn't really bad news overall. Dollar General, stock down 14%, one day. But if you look at the year to date, they're up 92%. So went through, what we call our kind of coverage universe, 20 or so stocks publicly traded, from the HelloFreshes and the Ocados to the Krogers and the Albertsons, and just kind of looked at the difference between the stock prices year to date and the stock price, over the month of September to October, essentially. And very good news, up 20% or more, most of them. On the year, most of them down 5 or 6% in the month. And the idea that, maybe investors are kind of looking ahead to the point at which these retailers are going to have to lap these enormous sale gains that they've made in the last year, and kind of portends maybe a little bit rougher sledding as we go forward.
And how do people sign up for the newsletter?
They can go onto our website. There's a link up there, the menu link, click down, newsletters. There you go.
Got it. Okay. So a couple things. One, a new survey came out from Piper Sandler. It's their 40th biannual survey taking stock with teens, and teen spending hit an all-time low during coronavirus. Not a surprise. But they spent a lot less money on food, concerts, and events. And for difference, males still devote the most, 21% of their wallets to food, and women devote the most, 27% of their wallets to clothing. So, Jen, I'm not going to ask you to comment on that. The other thing is Sam's Club. This is interesting to me, and we're going to get to Chuck's question in a minute on Facebook. But Sam's Club has announced that they're going to make smaller sizes of products for the holidays. Chuck is asking, how are retailers forecasting sales for 2021? Are they assuming new pandemic-based sales will carry forward until a vaccine is deployed? But what we're seeing for this holiday season, Sam's Club now has ham in condensed sizes. They have 4 pounds, 7 pounds, and 10 pounds. And same thing with prepared side dishes. They're making it to feed a family of 4. And to build on the story that we had on Tuesday, where we talked about Mexico limiting sizes and trying to change the health attributes, if you would, of the population of Mexico, a new report came out this morning in the Lancet from the UK that restricting the promotion and merchandising of unhealthy foods and beverages lead to a reduction in their sales, presenting an opportunity to improve people's diets. And in the study, restricting the merchandising of unhealthy products reduced the purchase of sugar-sweetened drinks and confectionery, resulting in a reduction of the total amount of free sugar purchased from food and drinks by 2.8%, which is the equivalent of 1.8 tons of sugar. This was just in 20 stores, 20 test stores. But what they also found, that the business performance was unaffected for the retailer. So, I think we're going to see more and more of that, and hopefully we're going to see a bit of it here as well. Brett, why don't you tell us a little bit about the CSP networking conference that just took place?
Sure, Phil. So I just recently hosted, it was at the end of September, CSP's first virtual event of the season, which was exciting. And it was the annual Dispensed Beverage Forum, CSP's 12th one. So essentially, dispensed beverages is one of the hottest, most popular, and just, most traditional category in a convenience store. How many times, if you could picture, you've walked into a gas station while filling up at the pump and you're grabbing a quick drink at the fountain, or, I remember when I was a little kid. Zero for you, Phil. I'm not stunned, surprisingly. But when I was a kid, we used to go to the 7-Eleven by my middle school all the time and get Slurpees. So like dispensed beverage is huge. So obviously during the pandemic, dispensed beverage operations have declined just like everything else. So this event was really to chat with retailers and provide insights on what can we do here. So just I'm not going to run down the entire thing because then I could be on here for an hour myself. But just a quick rundown of some interesting things that stood out to me during the event. So first of all, you got to figure out who's drinking these beverages. So there's a couple different types of dispensed beverage here. There's self-serve. So when you go to the fountain yourself, fill up your drink, or recently made to order dispensed beverages. So those are more smoothies, milkshakes, things along those lines. So two different types of consumers here. You have more female Caucasian millennials who are doing more self-serve. And then actually on the made to order side, it's more male, African-American, Hispanic, and Gen Zs. And males are actually also the top C-store food service consumers overall. And I know, Phil, you just mentioned a few minutes ago that men are still dominating just more food in general. So that was one thing that stood out. But another really big thing I wanted to talk about is coffee and the decline in morning consumption, because obviously people aren't leaving their homes. People are working from homes. Right. They're not getting in their cars. They're not driving to work. So they're not stopping for coffee. So coffee has certainly taken a hit here. So one thing that I thought was really interesting that one of the presenters from Mintel noted was that retailers, C-stores, should explore coffee subscription programs. And Jackson, I'm going to call you out here because I know at our office you were part of a coffee subscription program that you really enjoyed. So they were doing things, there's talk of these actually helping retailers where you pay a monthly subscription or a weekly subscription and you could pop in and get one whenever you want. Is that really how it works, Jackson?
Yeah, no, it's at the coffee shop at the bottom of our office building. It's very simple. You just had a number and you gave them your number, a membership number, and then they would hand you coffee. It got to the point where I would just walk up and they knew my order and my number and they would just hand me my coffee, and that service. And that's why I enjoyed it so much. So, having this kind of subscription program opens up opportunity to really serve consumers in a much more efficient way.
And much more personalized.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Jen and John, like to get your opinion on Chuck's comment that he posted on Facebook. How are retailers forecasting sales for 2021? Have you talked to any retailers who have given you any insights? Because we don't know, what's going to happen next. Are we going to have another pandemic, or is this, going to go away? And how are retailers trying to deal with this? Jen, any insights?
Yeah, I mean, I think the retailers I've talked to, and it's been primarily about, because part of my beat is, retail food service and that space. So, there's just a lot of concern about, and wait and see, and they don't know, there's still, while things have come back a lot in fresh, and, certainly certain departments in the perimeter have experienced, meat is off the charts. We've talked about that. Seafood's still up. But, prepared foods and, the hot bar went away, the salad bar went away, and a lot of people have regrouped on that and they're re-merchandising those areas. And I'll talk about that a little bit more when we talk about the new Ideal Market, Whole Foods Ideal Market in Denver, but getting creative with those spaces. But I think that they don't know, they just like we all don't know what's going to happen. They're probably cautiously optimistic, but it remains to be seen if that area in the store will come back.
Yeah, I agree, Phil, and with Jen's comments. The publicly traded retailers have been very reluctant to share what they call guidance, about what's ahead, because they don't really know. But as you referenced earlier, I'm in receipt of the same news from Sam's Club that's kind of talking about smaller items, smaller Thanksgiving turkeys, if people can pull it off, because they're expecting a little bit, smaller groups to be gathering at the holidays. And we've talked about this a couple of times on the show. That said, if we're into kind of a new normal where the comps are up 10% versus 18%, that's still good times for retail. And that's sort of what, I was getting to earlier with this idea that, are people swinging too wildly on the reaction to this news, on sort of how things are going? Because I will say, although they haven't really surrendered much of the specifics of what they anticipate, to a man, the retailers are all saying, hey, we expect that the trends that have affected our business and in such a positive way over these last 6 months are going to continue, because consumer habits are changing and certain things aren't coming back. And we'll talk more about that, with Kroger's announcement this morning. A lot of stuff. It's all coming together, Phil.
So I was on the phone with a retailer yesterday, talking about planning and so on. And basically what they shared is, they've given up on Thanksgiving, Christmas, whatever else. They're planning on Easter, that they're going to have some huge programs for Easter this year. So Chuck, I don't know if that answers your question, but we'll try. If anybody else has more questions, please just type them into the chat box on Facebook. And John, let me go back to you for a second. Let's talk about Fairway. Village Supermarkets, which is part of Wakefern, ShopRite banners, has infiltrated New York, first with Gourmet Garage. Now they've gone into Fairway. How are they doing in Fairway?
Yeah, mixed bag, we can say. They reported their earnings yesterday, as we've got up on our site, and it was kind of a mix of effects. Adding the stores in New York come with a better margin profile for the items that they sell, so it's a little bit more profitable. But what they said was sales are down from historical levels at Fairway, which is what they attributed to consumers in Manhattan, where the stores that they acquired were bailed just as the COVID thing started. And I do know a lot of New Yorkers kind of took off for other places at that time. They had the wherewithal to do
Everybody
stuff.
moved to Jen's house in Denver.
Yeah, exactly. Denver, Florida, they went to some places that hadn't been infected yet and probably infected them. But what they didn't say is there's been sort of a lot of look, in Village's case, switching stores over from one banner to another and one system to another is difficult in the best of times, and they had to do this like right as the COVID crush was happening. I think they had some execution issues there. I know, Village, for its part, was making their executives available every week on a, call in or web chat with customers to make sure that they were, getting the message out that, one, we're trying to solve these problems and bear with us, and, how can we help you, kind of thing, that has happened. Meanwhile, this story came out in the New York Post last week. We don't have anything fresh on it yet, but apparently they've got a dispute going on with the old owner of Fairway, which is moving into their own business and, among other things, hasn't surrendered their customer list to them, as I think they agreed to do, or at least what Village feels like they agreed to do. So a little bit of a messy transition. This is not the first messy transition of one retail brand to another that we've seen, and it won't be the last. But added problems with COVID, with consumers leaving, with execution in stores, and a kind of a fast transfer of these things, which were, as acquired in a bankruptcy auction.
But there was also another factor that hasn't come out about this. If I look at their two most profitable stores, the one on Broadway and 74th, and then the one up at 134th Street, I think, or wherever it is, also on the west side, you cannot social distance in those stores. You can't. It's physically impossible. Those stores were built to be slammed. The checkout line, they have people down the aisles waiting to check out. So I'm sure that there were a lot of people who, frankly, were afraid to go into those stores as well. Some of their new stores, okay, they weren't doing that well to begin with. But the two most profitable stores, they were just not built to operate in this environment.
Well, you know what I'll say? Yeah, I mean, I'll agree with you there. I think I'll say one thing. I think the Harlem store might be a little bit more socially distanced. I don't think that store changed hands. I might be wrong about that, but
I thought Village took that one as well. No,
I got to double check on that.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on this. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Fairway to an extent was one of those chains that was vulnerable to being a victim of its own success, like we talked about with Costco. Really crowded even before the pandemic. The pandemic comes in, and people go, "Oh, it's way too crowded now."
Yeah.
They definitely took longer also to sort of get into the sales pace that some of the others had. They had more room to grow.
And I'm not a scientist, as everybody knows. But if we look at the Harlem store, one of the centerpieces of the Harlem store was half the store was a refrigerator. So in that store, that's where you had the meat, you had the cheese, and whatever else. So it's not a refrigerated case by itself. The entire 6,000 square foot was a refrigerator. And I'm just wondering what the impact of being in that refrigeration unit has on COVID. And I can't answer that. I'll ask Dr. Fauci later, and hopefully he'll give that to me. But Jen, why don't you talk about natural grocers?
So natural grocers, they have really hung their hat on, their community and nutrition education, and being, they really have a strong community environment where they're offering information on health and wellness. And of course, the pandemic has sidelined that. as it has for everyone. And so they just announced a virtual nutrition coaching program that's free to all of its shoppers. And they're doing some cool things. I know a lot of actually, and I know you speak with retail dietitians all the time, Phil, and I spoke with some yesterday. And, a lot of folks are doing this, ShopRite, Stop and Shop, a lot have virtual dietitians. And so Natural Grocers is doing something where they've got a lineup of once a week on, I think it's Wednesday nights at 6 p.m. in Colorado. They're having a guest speaker on health and wellness, on everything from, how to boost your, immunity system, nutrition density, winter wellness. And so they have this whole roster of guest speakers that you can check out. And then in addition to that, they're also offering one-on-one coaching. And I think the sessions are like an hour, and that's also free. And you can just sign up for that and have all your nutrition questions answered by one of the Natural Grocers experts.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot. Everybody from Kroger, HEB, everybody's going virtual with this. And if we look at what's going on in Canada, which is really interesting with Sobeys, Sobeys is only on the east part of Canada, and they only have 27 dietitians. What they're doing with their telehealth and similar is they want to expand across all of Canada, not store-wise, but knowledge-wise. And I'm sure what's going to come next is e-commerce and having dark stores throughout all of Canada, and Sobeys really giving Loblaws a run for its money. So Jackson, you're our tech guy now. And Amazon, probably in the food world at least, is leading the pack, leading the way for technology, for everything that we're doing. But you've uncovered, something new that Amazon is doing.
Yeah, last week at CSP, we wrote about how Amazon is launching this palm-powered payment system where you can essentially identify yourself by just holding your hand over the sensor, and you just take a minute to identify your hand with your credit card of choice. And I think it's very telling for the conversation that we've been having here about how the pandemic is affecting these stores. And I think that this is just one of many innovations as far as payment and identification that we're going to see that is an answer to COVID, and not necessarily the technology itself, but the way that it's being marketed. I mean, we've been hearing about from the New York Post that Amazon has been working on some, biometric powered payment system since late last year. So this has been in the works for a while, but they're aware that, people are looking to feel safe when they're shopping. They're looking to get in and out of places quickly. And so that's why, Amazon's palm powered system is a little more focused in that way. And I think it's a sign of just where the country is right now.
So my concern would be, and I love the technology aspect of it and so on, but if I've got to put my hand on a piece of glass that somebody has put their hand on right before, isn't that, against CDC guidelines? I mean, we're talking about having to have plexiglass, having cashiers in supermarkets have to wipe down the key, the credit card, PIN thing all the time. And now we see all these credit card companies doing the contactless thing, so you don't even have to swipe your card. So I don't think I want to put my palm down on a piece of glass.
So
it's my understanding, though, I didn't mean to cut you off, Jackson, but when we covered this for the grocery side of things, and they had said that you hover your hand over it.
Right,
okay.
Right. Yeah, you're just, and it's essentially the same thing that you do with your QR code on your phone, except you're replacing that with your palm. Yeah, you just hold it over it. So, and technically there is, I suppose you could say there is a little bit of touch there with, when you insert your card, when you're first identifying yourself, but you only have to do that one time, and afterwards it's just holding your hand over it. So technically it is contactless, but yeah, it's there are.
No. Okay.
There's always room to break COVID regulations.
Yeah. As long as I just have to hover my hand, that was great. When I first saw the story and I started reading it, I was saying, they're finally going to start embedding a chip in my palm, so I can just, walk through. So
well, and yeah, there are legitimate privacy concerns. I mean, we are identifying our methods of payment with our biological selves, and that's scary for a lot of people.
well, I remember when it first came out, and this is probably about 20 years ago. And for the life of me, I can't remember the name of it. I'm still a member of it, even though I haven't used it in close to a year. Clear at airports. So when Clear first came out, you had to do a retina scan, you had to do your fingerprints, and you had a card. Now, basically, you can either do your retina or you can do your two fingers, and that gets you through, security. So, I mean, the technology has been around a long time. We probably just weren't ready for it. And now with COVID-19, we're ready for anything. So on that note, Jen, why don't you wrap us up and give us some good news?
Sure. So Nature Fresh Farms in Canada is doing something cool. They just introduced this totally compostable wrap for its cucumbers. They're a produce company, obviously, and it breaks down in like something crazy, like I think it's like 90 minutes or so. 90 days. 90 days. It totally breaks down into water and CO2. So that's, obviously a plus for the environment. But in addition, they're doing a campaign, and I think it runs through the month of October, where for everyone who shares a post on this initiative of compostable packaging for produce, they're going to plant one tree, up to 25,000 trees this month.
Very cool. Very cool. And I'm wondering if it's the same, forgot the name of the company, but the one in California that's wrapping the avocados with a similar type of covering that also decomposes in like 90 days or something. And they're experimenting and putting it on other fruit, but very cool. And I love the tree planting idea because we've also, frankly, because of climate change and so on, certainly in the West, we've had more fires. I think it's up to 700,000 acres, have been destroyed. So we're going to need to plant a lot more trees. So thank you for that good news. Thank you all for joining us. And again, as always, you can find our archives on CSP, on Winsight Grocery Business, on Food Service Business, on supermarketguru.com. So check out some of the past episodes as well. Have a great weekend. We will see you back here Tuesday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern and 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. And, I'm going to say, relax, be calm, and wear a mask.